You want to be a young boss, but your sales are stuck. You're burned out trying to find the right people, and you end up doing all of the work yourself. You're bleeding money, and you're fighting to keep your business afloat. I've been there. I'm Isabel Guarino, and I've scaled businesses to millions, and I've watched ideas burn to the ground. And I know exactly what it takes to survive and win. This is Young Boss, the podcast that helps you break through the barriers standing between you and the business you deserve, where youth is your power. Some people play music. Josh Simons, founder and CEO of Vinyl Group, built an entire ecosystem around it. At the age of 17, he dropped out of school to make a feature film, cleaned toilets to pay rent, and toured in a band, and eventually founded what became the LinkedIn for musicians, VAMPR, a global platform that helped 1.7 million artists connect, collaborate, and create hits. But Josh didn't stop there. When the industry crashed, he didn't cling to his company. He sold it to himself, bet on a merger few believed in, and built Vinyl Group, a public music tech powerhouse, redefining how creativity and data collide. From lemonade stands and go-karts to AI-powered innovation and shareholder transparency, Josh's story is proof that real leadership isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to evolve. Let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Josh. Super excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I think that you might be one of our first international guests, so I'm excited to talk about that.
We love doing firsts here at Vinyl Group.
Well, amazing. You have quite a few businesses under your belt. So break it down to me. How did you get started as an entrepreneur?
Well, probably, that entrepreneurial spirit has been present since as long as I can remember. I think even as a kid, I remember doing lemonade stands and building like little go-karts and things that we would like lease out. And so I think there was always that entrepreneurial spirit from a very, very young age. But probably proper first taste of it was I dropped out of school at 17, made a feature film. I really liked film back then, and I'd made a few short films that had done okay. One of them was acquired, and so I had some sort of, I suppose, first real taste of running a business, because you have to manage a budget and hire people and try and deliver a product that you hopefully sell for a profit at the end. And so that was my first real taste of it, and then I burnt out a little bit because I think I was probably too young to run a business of any scale, and I went away and just literally cleaned toilets and mowed lawns for a couple of years, and that just allowed me to enjoy my 20s for a few years before I was like, no, the itch is coming back and I got to really do this in a bigger way. And so then I sort of started a band, and that the business side of that was more running the label and the publishing company that powered that band. And then that was my proper taste of music industry business, which is obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, it's just what I do now. And then like any sort of good entrepreneur, I started looking for what wasn't working. And there were certain restrictions or limitations I was finding with my networking capabilities in new cities. And that's what inspired me to make this thing called VAMPR, which is really kind of the foundation for everything I have now, because it was my kind of doorway into a much larger music technology company. But that's in a nutshell, that was the journey.
That's amazing. So short and sweet, what is VAMPR?
It's like LinkedIn for the music industry. So when I was having that sort of brain spark moment of inspiration, I was looking around at all the tools that were available to aspiring musicians and what they were good at. And there were tools that allowed people to build like a community of fans. There were tools that allowed people to get their music on Spotify, collect royalties, even make music. But there weren't any tools that allowed people to network better. And LinkedIn was objectively shit for networking for creative people. And it still kind of is. It's gotten a lot better, to be fair, but it's still not a place where you don't go on LinkedIn and go, I'm looking for a drummer, right?
Right.
But
Right.
but on VAMPR you do. So that was sort of there needs to be a tool like this. And there were like a few startups that sort of claimed to do that, like find a bandmate. But none of them had achieved any scale, and so they were all essentially useless. So we had to, that was when it was like, well, we've got to build this. This is a huge opportunity. So that I was going to say was VAMPR. That is VAMPR.
I love it. It is like Tinder for musicians, right? Being able
That's
to
right.
find the exact musician that you potentially need to fill out a band or record something with you. So how many users do you guys have?
I think it's 1.6 or 1.7 million or something like that. So it's quite a few
That's
people.
amazing.
Yeah.
Huge growth.
But
And go
yeah,
ahead.
I think that the thing that's like different, and especially when it was my only focus, because now I'm the CEO of the parent co. But when that was my only focus, and when I used to pitch it, and I got really good at distilling, what makes us different from the other products that are out there. There really is nothing else that you can go on and say, I want to meet a drummer who's 5 kilometers from Louisville, who listens to Kanye West and Pink Floyd, and who's between 20 and 30, because that's the age range of the band that I'm trying to create. You just can't, it doesn't matter how big the other social networks are, you can't do that on Facebook, you can't do that on Google. It's the only place on the internet where you can actually sort that way. And so it's really special.
That is very cool. So not only are they able to connect there, but you've gotten super specific with the searching capability so that they can find exactly, because obviously your experience in the industry, you understand that it's not just about a drummer, because a drummer shows up, he's 65, that doesn't work for the teen band, right?
Right.
It's about the look, it's about the sound, it's about what do
Tribe. The
they,
word that we use is tribe because it kind of sums up all of it. And how can you use maths to help you align with fellow tribesmen and
yeah,
or tribespeople? And I think we've gotten as close as anyone ever has, and we refine it all the time. We don't stop.
yeah.
It's not. We didn't stop building that product when I sold it a few years ago. There's a bigger team as ever working on making that algorithm consistently better. And with AI, I think you can expect a step change again in quality, in speed, in accuracy. And so it's really interesting to see what will that look like in 5 years, because it's already pretty good. So I think logically you'd hopefully see an explosion of users, because at a certain point when it just delivers every time, it just becomes more useful, so more people would use it theoretically.
Yeah.
But that's what we would expect.
It's absolutely amazing. And I think it's really empowering to independent artists who don't have to just rely on word of mouth for their next gig, or, trying to wait for that email, call, text of somebody saying, hey, this is what I'm looking for. It probably provides them more consistent opportunities.
Yeah, certainly the ones who use it right. Look, there's always people on any platform that abuse it, right? So like we're always dealing with people coming up with new ways to spam their stuff. The funny thing about the spammers is that it's so inefficient for everyone. As in, if I go onto VAMPR and I go check out my latest single, and it seems to always be people who make rap music, but I don't know what that says about rap. I love rap. But people putting out, pushing their latest single and sending it to everyone and swiping right on everyone and sending links. No one's listening. Like, that's just straight up annoying. So I always find the tactics of spammers funny, because they're really inefficient. But we're always trying to shut that noise down. But aside from those people, yes, if you're using it properly and sincerely, and you're trying to connect and meet promoters and meet agents and stuff, 100% you could start to build a touring schedule around connections that you make on the app. That's huge.
I love that. The music industry, it's interesting how you've been able to kind of blend tech with it. And really, this is a tech music business. So
Yeah.
did you have any background or experience in tech, or did you just hire the right people and kind of partner with them to launch this?
I think I've had like just this sort of curious symbiotic relationship with tech forever. I've got an extremely mechanical mind. So even going back to being a teenager again, I used to run like the official fan page for like 24 and The Simpsons and all these Fox things, and I was just this little boy hacker type from Australia, and working on these like, multi-million-dollar properties for Fox. So like there was that kind of, I was always sort of interested in sort of, that's more IT than tech, to be fair, but like
Yeah.
that's sort of an early example. And then I think into my 20s and that I was thinking about blockchain and mixed reality type solutions well before they were buzzwords, but never really had the funding to pursue a tech project until VAMPR. And I think the reason I was able to get the funding for VAMPR was because it was my domain expertise. So I came from a music industry background. I think just my business plan was probably demonstration enough that, this guy has some fundamental understanding of technology and he's got a pretty clear idea of how he's going to build out the team. It's all about the team, right? So, and you already captured that in the question. So I had to go and find a CTO and various foundational members of the team to build out a graph-based database and a vision for the product. Of course, fast forward, 9 years or 10 years, whatever it's been, and the team's unrecognizable because the requirements change, the platform has grown. You need people who have dealt with hundreds of thousands of active users versus hundreds or low thousands. So the requirements change and the team changes. But I think I had a decent enough grasp to know who to hire and how to keep that team sort of working towards a common goal and motivating folks. So for whatever reason, that came incredibly naturally.
That's amazing for you, right? Because so many entrepreneurs, I think, have a really hard time identifying who to hire, what skills am I looking for, and what you just said is also the ability to be able to let go of people, to know that what got you here won't get you there. There's someone else to take you to that next level.
Yeah, that last bit doesn't make you very popular.
No.
But, we incentivize people with equity and I've made a lot of people rich, so I also don't really care.
Hey, if you have a true vision to get as far as you have been able to, you have to kind of be ruthless and understand that. And it just kind of is what it is, So
yeah, that's part of the process. In the same way that, like, do I want the person teaching me my ABCs in grade 1 to be teaching me PhD level, studies? Probably not. And it's not a slight on the teacher teaching the ABCs. Like, that's really bloody important too. But it's just, the only thing they have in common is that they're called teachers, but they're fundamentally different roles. It's the same in technology when you got someone who can, configure a server for a startup that just needs a basic staging environment and a production environment versus someone who is maintaining something that's alive and breathing and servicing millions of people. They're just different skill sets. It's not a slight on the person or their capabilities. And that's the lesson that I think a good CEO learns very quickly and hopefully very early. The staff themselves don't always have a decent grasp on that, but they often learn.
It's a very true lesson. What has been one of the hardest parts of running a team like this with people with such, varying skills and levels?
Well, what we just talked about. People management, getting people in and out is the hardest part of the job. Not because those conversations are hard, although they're not easy. But more so because of the disruption it causes to the business. So just getting people in and out in general, obviously getting people in, there's a spooling up time that's costly to the roadmap. It's costly to the time of the executives who are bringing them up to speed. And in some ways it's risky because, if the person doesn't work out, you got to sort of spin the bottle again and try round 2 and 3 and hopefully you get it right the first time. I sort of generally think anything above a 50% strike rate is actually pretty good. So it's expensive getting people in, and then getting people out is disruptive. It's disruptive to the culture. I spend more time explaining to the folks that remain in the business why it was necessary to evolve than with the exiting party, which makes sense because you're trying to communicate like what we're doing here is for the betterment of the business and for everyone who remains with it. It's hard stuff, it's not for the faint of heart.
No, for sure not. I always say like hiring and firing because exactly what you said right there. It's not just, we made the hire, we move forward. It's how much time and energy it takes to get them trained up, see if they're the right fit. Oh, they're not. Now you've got to go back and explain that again to the people who are on board. So It's
That's right.
definitely a lot. Okay, let's talk about raising capital for this project. Did you self-fund this? Did you go out and raise? How did you get the capital to start?
Yeah, I should say, because it was my co-founder for VAMPR. We tried to follow the sort of Silicon Valley roadmap of sort of starting with friends, families, and fools, then doing an angels round, and then sort of doing a small, more traditional seed or pre-seed, and then moving into the sort of A, Bs, and Cs. So we tried following that. We didn't follow it quite so linearly, although I'm not sure that anyone does to exactly a T. We broke up some of those with community rounds. So through platform WeFunder, we raised about $4 million, I think, over about 3 rounds that we spaced between some of the more standard traditional rounds. I think altogether for VAMPR, before we sold it, we'd raised just a touch under 5 million US,
Wow.
which is not a lot of money to raise over. I think it was 8 years that we raised and deployed that capital. Really not a lot if you average it out.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, then we sold it, and now the investors in VAMPR hold a stake in what's called Vinyl Group, which is a publicly listed vehicle in Australia, and I've subsequently raised $35 million there or something. So yeah, I've raised a lot of money in the last 10 years.
As a young boss, you're probably buying stuff for your business all the time. I know I am, and I love a good Amazon purchase. So we created the Young Boss Amazon list for you to buy things for your office, for your team, books for you to check out, even clothes or jewelry that I'm wearing on the show. So go check out the Amazon list and add something to your cart today. Now, back to the show.
What's been the most challenging part of raising money?
Every round's really different. It so depends on the stage of the business. My challenge now, like the decks I have to make to raise money now, in so many ways, so much simpler than the decks that I used to have to raise on. And I suppose that's because I want to be so cocky to say a track record, but there's an execution record.
Yeah.
But the points I'm making now are so much more sophisticated. So I look back at some of my early decks, and they were, 16 or 20 pages long, and they were really trying to just explain the sort of basic, this is what we're trying to build, please give us money. Now it's like, it's just so much more sophisticated. It's like, if you give me this lever, I can create this many pathways to get the value of, all shareholders equity to this next sort of step change. And if you can provide me with access to that, these are the ways I can do that. And so you're creating more of these like value creation diagrams, and it's just more sophisticated, and it actually, on top of being more sophisticated, if you can find a way to distill it in fewer words, that's a separate skill again. So it just changes. The requirement changes as you get bigger. And the one thing I find, more just reflecting on, just funny, is younger entrepreneurs who seek me out and look for my advice with their own fundraising efforts sort of ask for, what do I do? What do you do to raise money? How can I tap into that? And the things that I'm doing to raise money now are so irrelevant to what you need to do to raise that seed capital that you're trying to get. It's not worth the time of even going through and explaining it. Like, sincerely, that's not being a gatekeeper or anything. I'm very much a fan of helping other entrepreneurs. I'm doing a podcast later today with a not-for-profit it's not startup, it's a not-for-profit young organization in the States after this. And I'm just helping them because it's something I'm passionate about, and I'm able to give back. But the point I'm making is, like, the advice and the tools that I'm using to raise at this stage just have no application in that early stage. So it changes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important for people to hear, because raising capital is not the same. It depends how much, who you're talking to, where, what the format is, your background, skills, and experience. Because if it's your first time, it's very different than if it's your 50th time. So it is
What I
important
will
to know
say
and
is
understand that.
raising money for something that exists already is easier. Like, if you're looking at an acquisition, for example, because you're able to point to an asset that someone else has demonstrated its value, hopefully, and and it's kind of easier to sell whoever's, you know, funding it on, because you're saying this is thing over there inside our camp, we think it's going to be worth a slight multiple on that, and this is why, this is the logic we've used. It's easier to get money for that than just going, hey, just give us more money. That's actually always tricky, no matter how big or small you are. Just asking for money with no real objective is never easy, and so you shouldn't do it. But yet everyone sort of seems to in the start. So certainly asking for money for an existing asset is easier, but I wouldn't try that as a sort of early stage startup, because hopefully you're trying to prove something that's brand new, and B, you probably don't have an integration record and a record of knowing how to buy and sell other companies. And so again, everything sort of happens in stages, and you very much do have to work up to some of those more complex transactions.
Yeah. So you sold VAMPR.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does that look like to exit a business like that?
Well, I exited to myself.
Oh, okay. Tell me more.
I mean, that's cheeky, but no, I sold VAMPR to a public vehicle in Australia called, at the time, Jackster, now Vinyl Group. And VAMPR needed help because we had raised money at a really high valuation in 2021. And then in 2022, when we came to the end of our runway, there'd been a massive sort of re-rate across all of tech, and private tech companies had all taken massive hits to their valuation. And my board, who had been patient for seven or 8 years at that point, was just kind of not interested in a sort of, a significant down round that would wipe off some 80% of the value. And so the directive was, Josh, use that energy that you were going to use to raise money and see if you can find a buyer. The company that bought us, Jackster, solving a similar problem. In fact, they had a similar tagline. I think they also called themselves LinkedIn for Music at one point, but it was a very different piece of technology, and actually quite complementary to what we'd built. And so the sort of idea of bringing them together was attractive, and it was also, as a public vehicle in a time where the private markets were taking a bit of a beating, it was kind of attractive to go into a small public vehicle as a way to raise money in a tricky environment. So we still took a huge haircut to facilitate the deal, but we took, in a sort of script for script transaction, we took a gamble by accepting stock in this public company. The idea is that both companies were effectively struggling, and that together we would be substantially stronger, both sides. So that was the gamble, and it was definitely a gamble for both sides, and I'd say it's one that's paid off. So once that deal was completed, my team came through, and we kind of cleared out a lot of the old team that was there, and we got on with building a new, sort of stronger company as two, and then wasted no time in starting on what you could now look back on as an acquisition spree, but it sort of wasn't the intent. It was more, here we are, a company with multiple assets, trying to work out what our identity is, what our purpose is, and we kind of realized quite quickly we are a music tech portfolio business, and we have an opportunity to lean into that and use that to grow, and that's exactly what we did.
I love it. I think it's a really big testament to say, hey, when things maybe aren't panning out the way that you were hoping or thinking up front, how do you pivot? How do you make this happen? And it sounds like you just took it on the chin, made it happen, and now you're set up hopefully for success going here forward. Where do you see the future?
So. It was quite a lot of reflexology involved to not only get myself comfortable with the position I was in, but the shareholders around me, and just had to be a contortionist to make it acceptable for every party. But we got there. I look back on those days; they were some of the most challenging of my life, and I'm quite good at compartmentalizing. So thankfully, I don't spend a lot of time stuck in that hole. But it was quite dark for a moment there, because you are contemplating throwing away everything you've really ever worked for in your professional life on a bit of a long shot. But looking back now, you'd go, "Oh, that was a really smart, calculated move," and it's all panning out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. And I think it's vulnerable and brave of you to share that, because obviously everyone listening here, they're young bosses, young entrepreneurs, CEOs. And sometimes people don't want to talk about the failures or the struggles that they've had, and what that actually looks like, and how much it sucks to go back to people who, have given you time, energy, effort, and money, and tell them, hey, things aren't working out the way that they were, projected to.
Well, two things I'd say to that. I think as leaders who have been through things like that, it's our responsibility to share those stories so that folks getting into this have a more responsible view of actually what they might be getting into. And also it might help them, through their own moments when they're contemplating some similar problems or, some similar tricky situations, to go, oh, people have gotten through this before. So it's reassuring as well. But B, you have a responsibility to your shareholders to obviously go back to them when things get tough. And I do unfortunately hear horror stories of founders who just bury their head in the sand until it's too late. And that's just inconceivable in my mind. And maybe that's the difference between, so-called successful leader versus, failed entrepreneurs. I don't know, but the idea that anyone wouldn't be just 100% transparent with shareholders is always a bit foreign to me.
It is crazy when you hear these stories. It's like, how could you let it go that far? Like, is being honest that hard?
They're meant to be there to help you. That's the thing, is like people with capital typically, I mean, there's exceptions to this rule, but typically they've had their own colourful business career, and they've got their own war stories and got their own scars. I've always treated investors, even my thornier ones, and we've all got thorny investors, but I treat them like a resource, because they've just got a wealth of knowledge and you don't have to pay for it. So whereas other knowledge sources, you might have to pay for a course or go on a retreat or whatever condition comes with it, shareholders are great. You can pick up the phone and go, I've got a problem, and you share the problem, because your problem is somewhat their problem, and so they've actually got an aligned interest in helping you solve that issue. They'll respect you more because you've been transparent. You've brought them in to help them solve it, so they'll feel valued, which is another way of giving someone value back. It's not just always financial. So there's no downside to being transparent with shareholders.
Josh, I am loving this, because it's almost like they are shared problem holders with you, like it is their problem too, just like that. And I do think that there's such a bad mindset around this, that I've got to go away, figure out the solution, and bring it back to them and say, look, here was the problem, but here's how I patched it. Instead, you're saying, don't do that at all. Lean further into them and ask them. I think it's like,
bringing in options is good. So if you go, here's my problem, and here are the 3 ways I think we can address it, that's a productive starting point to a conversation. But if they then come back and go, actually, there's a 4th way you might consider, fucking great. That means everyone's winning. Like,
yeah,
you want the best idea to win, not just your idea. I never care if my idea wins. I want the best idea to win. That makes us all wealthier.
It seems like you lead with your ego down and a lot of humility.
I hope so. You have to have an ego to get this far, and you have to be a leader is to sort of have ideas and solutions at hand. So I think that requires, maybe ego is the wrong word, it certainly requires bravery and a strong opinion. But I think a real leader can shelve their opinion when there's a better option available. And I do it every day. You have to.
Yeah, I love that. Where do you see the future of VAMPR going?
Like I said, I'm really interested to see what AI does to our growth. I think if we can get it properly integrated into our matching algorithm, I would anticipate that user base to grow. And then further, I mean, if our platform's all about helping 2 humans to connect, what if and this is very early stages of contemplating this feature-wise, but what if we allow people to also connect with an agent? And instead of looking for another, and this would have been inconceivable 2 years ago to even say this, but instead of saying I'm looking for that drummer that listens to Pink Floyd and Kanye West, in Louisville, what if I want to say I want to find that person now, and I want them to send me something now that complements something I've been working on, and what would those those sort of artificial collaborations look and sound like? And so there's a few pieces there. There's the licensing side, which I've always said, and I'll continue to say, we're not going to try and solve those problems. There was an announcement last week that Universal and Udio had already come to some agreement on that. And so I think there's already the very clear signs that the music industry is working out the licensing issues for AI. Great. I've been saying for a year, someone else will sort that out, and good on them. So we will piggyback off the back of that and just hopefully make great tools, which is what we've always done. And so I think a combination of making new great tools and having just a more efficient algorithm should result in accelerated growth. So I think we're just going to keep doing more of the same, but with those two things front of mind.
Yeah. I love it. I think it's obviously so important to look at the future, but because you guys are tech, seeing how you can implement, AI. If you don't, we're all going to get left behind. So it's one of those things you just gotta play ball, see how it works with you, and move forward with it.
We've already been implementing it like through our business workflows, as I'm sure most people have, and it's made us just so much more productive. And I find it funny. I do read some stories that now it's almost in vogue to shit on AI a bit and sort of say how it spits out so much crap that humans spend more time fixing the crap to make it of any real value. My view on that is it only spits out crap if you're vague with what you put in the first place. And so that's just my experience, and quite comprehensive experience now, is when you're feeding it high quality information, you get an output of that same high quality but structured in a more useful way, and that's where we're getting the productivity and the time savings.
Yep, it's all about those clear prompts, right? If your prompt sucks, your answer will suck.
Yeah, it's really quite straightforward.
Very cool. If people want to learn more about you and your brands, where can they go to find more information?
Yeah, so for me, probably I got a website, joshsimons.us, and there's links to all of our brands on that site.
Okay, very cool. We will link it in the show notes. And I want to thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks so much, Isabel.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Young Boss with your host, Isabel Garino. Be sure to like, share, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, your youth is your power.